Hi everyone. So today I did a bit of reading on Saint Hildegard. I have several of her books. One I've touched on before. It's the healing remedies from her center in Germany, and the other one is Doctor of the Church. So I like to read up on her, and I like to use her recipes and things like that. She has a lot of different remedies, and they're just day-to-day things about how you can change your diet and you can get well. So for me, I have high blood pressure. My blood pressure is a little too high, and I'm working to bring that down. Part of it is that I need to lose weight, and everything is fine. I eat healthy. I don't overeat. I don't eat a lot of chocolates or sweets or things like that. But my main stress is my financial situation, because since I came to Canada, I've been earning very little money, and I have to keep my skills up. I have to keep training. I have to keep my skills relevant, and I have to pay my rent. I have to buy food just like everybody else, and that's my biggest stressor. So it's not like I have other major stresses in my life, but it's a little too high. So I'm working on bringing that down, and I like to look at her recipes and see which recipes or which foods will be good for helping with blood pressure, and also taking the calcium, because like my mom, I do not have strong bones. I mean, my bones were good, but now that I'm getting older, they're losing their density. So taking the calcium, it affects me some days. Most days I'm fine, but I have to take it because apparently just eating foods is not going to do it. I have to take a supplement. So I'm doing it because I don't want to end up with brittle bones in old age and not be able to care for myself. But it is something I didn't expect. And what I have done is I've made a note of her recipes and the foods that I have to eat. They say leafy greens are good, oats are good, calcium-rich foods are good. And these are my stress teddy bears, these two. So this one I got to support children 1 year from the PC Foundation at our local store. It was for Christmas 2020, and this other one is my Elvis teddy bear. So I use these two because after my case closed with my investigation, I used to get some anxiety, and I used to think, okay, what can I do? So big adult as I am, I have these teddy bears in my room, and I keep them on the bed with me, and they're just nice, comforting toys. And when other people talked about it, I was like, I've never heard of this. Even as a child, I never heard of it. When I was a child growing up in the war, yes, we had our toys and everything. But it's different when you're an adult and you're living on your own. And you can get very, very frightened. Now I'm fine, they're just there, and I still enjoy them. But I did get that one teddy bear at least to support the children, and also because I was getting anxiety. And the other one is from Graceland, because I wanted a little piece of Graceland in my home, and so I got that. But Saint Hildegard is an interesting saint. She's also a doctor in the church, and she's written books on different ailments and how you can cure them, using not only the foods that you eat, but also the gemstones of the earth, and how different animals also affect people, and what the effect is of us living out of balance with nature, with the foods we eat, with the gems we wear. So I like to read up on her and journal. And today I was reflecting on the gift of peace from the scriptures. And it really struck me because it was the anniversary of Mr. Kathrada, who passed away in South Africa. He was one of the men that went to prison. And for me, I went to university in South Africa, so it is very close to my heart, and it is something that I still get emotional about. I guess I could not say his name. I used to call him Uncle Cammy, and then I see it's Uncle Kathy. Everybody calls him Uncle Kathy. But yeah, I remember those days. I remember what was happening. We used to get the news in Rhodesia, and we used to question, to say, why is that happening? And the answer was, that's just the way it is. But I guess when you get older and you see all these wars in the world and what's happening, it's very, very frightening how easily peace is taken away and how countries can get attacked unprovoked. And there were initially all these protests for Ukraine. Now nobody's protesting for Ukraine. Now everybody's protesting for Palestine. So some of the people protesting don't even know what this river to the sea is, but they're protesting anyway. So it's interesting to see how easily peace is lost. And also for the political leaders, the Mandela and the people that went to prison, they paid a high price for their lives. All those years in prison, all the house arrests, all the time they couldn't see their children, their families. And Uncle Kathy was 34, I think, when he went into prison, and he was 60 when he came out. Imagine living on that island, isolated, with nobody except the other prisoners. So when I went out to give the talks at the schools on apartheid for the Nelson Mandela Children Fund for Canada, that's what I used to talk on. And the children used to say to me, well, why did they do that? And I used to say, it's racism. And they're like, what is racism? So you have to explain to them what it is and how it started, and that Canada started it. It started in this country. And it continues in different ways, in different forms, in the jobs people get, in the promotions people get, in the salaries people get paid. But the carding even happened now, as recently as the COVID. And I mean, even with me, it's happened where I've been taking photographs and the security guards have stopped me and said, is that your car? And I'm like, no, I'm taking a photograph of the sun. So, it does happen. And sometimes it's not the whites, sometimes it's the blacks that are stopping us, the Indians and the coloreds. So, yeah, I read that scripture today on Jesus and the gift of peace. And that deep grief when we lose somebody that we love, that is like a brother to us or a teacher to us. And even with Mary, when she goes to Jesus's tomb, and she's filled with grief and she does not recognize Jesus immediately. It's that same experience of how grief can touch us, because love moves us and love leaves that hole in our lives, in our hearts. But there's also a deep peace that comes from knowing that we will meet again, but not in this life. That presence is gone, that human presence of having somebody to have a quick call with, to have a meal with, to go for a walk with. That presence is gone. And also the people you face those moments with together, where your faith is tested, where your lives are tested, where your values are tested. They face the gallows together, because the Ghetto Act in South Africa is similar to what we had in Rhodesia. It would determine where you could live, where you could buy, where you could trade, what schools you could go to, and that's what they were standing up to, and that's what they stood against, and that's what my university stood against, Wits University. They were the first ones, and then after that UCT. So it's very hard when you come to Canada and you expect to be treated the same as everybody else. You expect to get the same help from your companies to study, to retrain, to qualify, and you get told you have an attitude of entitlement, and they're not going to give it to you. But we carry on and we hope for better days. We hope for better salaries, better increases. But people tend to forget where we came from and what we stood for. Sometimes you have to keep your voice calm and you have to carry on. But underneath that calm, even if they changed me in the call center. So there's no aggression in my voice. They had police on the calls, they had this one, that one. They changed me. It doesn't matter how they get me to talk. It doesn't mean that that anger will ever go away. And it doesn't mean that I will not keep going back to the Lord and saying, help me to cope with this. It's always going to be there. But they don't know who they're talking to on the phone. And even if they do, sometimes they want to make it worse. So I just remembered him today when I was reading the scriptures, and I read some of the articles people had written about him. I had watched that video that he gave when Nelson Mandela died, and he gave a speech at his service. Nobody deserves to be treated how we were treated, both in Zimbabwe, what was Rhodesia, and in Canada. I certainly did not deserve it. And it's sad. It's sad to see the reality of how Canada is. And the Jesuits know. Graham Fusion in South Africa knows. People know. But the status quo works for some and it doesn't work for others, including Justin Trudeau. It works for him.